The lonely arrival. The night sky above Kalor 5 shimmered like molten glass, the clouds glowing with the reflection of distant stars. The colony spaceport was quiet except for the hum of landing crafts and the soft hiss of steam escaping from their engines. Among the travelers, one small figure stood alone near the terminal gate, her thin silver cloak fluttering in the wind. Her name was Lyra, an alien child, no older than 12 human years. Her skin carried a faint shimmer of blue under the light, her silver eyes wide but tired. She held a broken toy sphere in her hands, something she never let go of, not even in her sleep. It was the only thing she had left from her home, a home that no longer existed. The adoption officer sighed as he scrolled through his digital pad. "Returned again," he muttered, shaking his head. He had seen hundreds of children like her, hybrids, half human, half something else. They were created in the war, used for experiments, and when peace came, no one wanted them anymore. They were too different, too strange, too alien. Lyra didn't cry. She had already learned that crying didn't change anything. She looked around the spaceport, watching humans walk by, families laughing, lovers hugging, friends reuniting. She wondered what that felt like, to be wanted, to be chosen. Every time she thought she had found a home, it ended the same way, returned, rejected, and forgotten. "Next ship leaves in 1 hour," the officer said. "You'll be sent to another colony. Maybe someone there will take you." He didn't look at her when he spoke. He didn't see the way her fingers tightened around her toy. He didn't notice how her shoulders shook, even though her face stayed calm. He didn't care, not really. But someone else did. From across the terminal, a man named Evan Cross stood by a maintenance panel, wiping grease off his hands. He was a mechanic, tall, rugged, with the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much work and too little kindness. He was fixing a malfunctioning fuel regulator when he noticed her, a small alien girl standing alone in the cold wind. No guardian, no smile, no hope. Something about that sight stopped him. He watched as a worker scolded her for standing too close to the docking line. She didn't speak, only stepped back quietly and nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. There was no anger in her, only silence. The kind of silence that screamed louder than words. Evan didn't know why it bothered him so much, but it did. When the rain started to fall, he saw her still standing there, shivering under the weak shelter. Everyone else hurried indoors. She didn't move. Her small figure looked so fragile that even the wind seemed careful not to break her. Evan walked over, unsure of what to say. "You'll catch cold out here," he said. Lyra looked up, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the rainlight. "I don't get sick," she whispered, her voice soft and strange, like music through metal. Evan frowned. "Where's your guardian?" "They left," she said simply. "They always leave." Those words hit harder than he expected. He saw the tag on her wrist. "Adopted returned," marked 3 times. Something twisted inside his chest. He had seen broken engines, broken machines, broken tools, but he had never seen a broken child. The officer called out, "Hey, don't bother. She's being transferred again. Another colony wants to try her out." Evan turned to him. "Try her out? She's not a product." The officer shrugged. "She's an experiment's leftover." "That's what they all are?" Evan looked back at Lyra, her small hands gripping her toy sphere like a lifeline. Her voice trembled when she spoke again. "Will they like me there?" He didn't know what to say. He wanted to tell her yes, but even she wouldn't believe it. That night, after his shift ended, Evan walked home through the colony's metal corridors, but the image of her stayed in his mind. The rain, the silver eyes, the quiet pain. He couldn't shake it off. He lived alone, in a small home filled with broken parts and half-finished machines. He told himself he didn't need anyone, but somehow, that silence tonight felt heavier than usual. He sat by his workbench, staring at an old drone he had been trying to fix, and he realized something. That machine reminded him of her, fragile, dented, unwanted, but still holding on, still waiting for someone to believe it could work again. By dawn, Evan made a decision that surprised even himself. He walked back to the adoption office, hair messy, eyes tired but determined. "I'll take her," he said. "The girl, Lyra." The officer blinked, confused. "You sure? She's different." Evan nodded. "So am I." And when Lyra woke up that morning, expecting another rejection, she found herself standing before the same man from the night before, holding a small umbrella. He smiled a little and said, "Come on, kid. Let's go home." For the first time in her short, lonely life, Lyra felt something she couldn't name. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was trust. Or maybe it was the feeling of being seen, truly seen. And somewhere deep inside her heart, something began to heal. Something that no experiment, no adoption, no rejection could ever erase again. The human who stayed, Evan Cross, was not a hero, not a soldier, not a man of fame. He was just a mechanic who lived on the edge of the human colony, fixing engines that no one else had time for. His home was a small metal shelter built beside the hangar bays, filled with scattered tools, humming machines, and the faint smell of burnt circuits. When Lyra stepped inside, she didn't speak. Her small hands clutched her toy sphere as if it was her heart. She looked around the dim workshop, the walls covered in rust, the air thick with oil, the soft hum of drones sleeping on shelves. It was not beautiful, but it was warm, and for the first time, she didn't feel like an object being returned. She felt. Curious, Evan didn't say much either. He just turned on the heater, handed her a towel, and said, "You can stay here tonight." His voice was quiet, rough like sandpaper, but kind underneath. Lyra nodded and sat near the heater, letting the warmth touch her cold fingers. Outside, rain fell on the tin roof like a soft drum beat. Inside, silence stretched between them. Not empty, but gentle. Evan worked on a small drone while Lyra watched, her eyes following every move. When the machine sparked, she flinched. He noticed, but said nothing, only adjusted his tone, making sure not to startle her again. Hours passed. When he finally looked up, she had fallen asleep sitting against the wall, her toy sphere glowing faintly in her lap. He sighed quietly, covering her with an old blanket. He didn't understand why he cared. He just knew he couldn't send her away like the others did. Morning came with pale sunlight leaking through the window. Lyra woke to the smell of warm bread and the sound of metal clinking. Evan had cooked breakfast. Simple food, but it felt like a feast to someone who was used to rations and silence. She sat quietly at the table while he fixed a broken kettle. When it sputtered to life, steam rising, she smiled for half a second. Evan caught it and said nothing. He just smiled too. Days turned into weeks. Evan worked and Lyra watched, sometimes helping, sometimes just listening. She didn't talk much, but her silence began to feel like company instead of emptiness. She started to hum when she worked with him, soft, mechanical tunes that seemed to blend with the sound of engines. Once, when Evan's old drone refused to start, Lyra touched it gently and whispered something. The engine flickered, then came alive. Evan stared, amazed. "What did you do?" She hesitated. "It was sad." He frowned. "The drone?" She nodded. "Machines get tired too. I just made it feel better." Evan laughed softly, the first real laugh he had in months. "Well," he said, "you just might be better at fixing things than I am." She looked down, embarrassed but smiling. That was the first time she truly felt safe. But safety was rare on Kalor 5. News spread fast, and soon whispers began to circle. A human mechanic, keeping an alien child with strange abilities. People began to ask questions. Some came to see her, others came to judge. Lyra didn't understand why they stared. She thought maybe she had done something wrong. Evan told her, "You don't need to hide who you are." But even he knew that in a place like this, kindness could turn into danger very quickly. One night, as they worked on repairing a shuttle engine, Lyra stopped suddenly. She looked toward the sky, her silver eyes glowing brighter than ever. "What is it?" Evan asked. She whispered, "They're coming." Before he could ask who, a sharp alarm echoed through the colony streets. A message flashed on his console. "Council inspectors incoming." Evan's heart sank. He knew what that meant. They had found out about her. He looked at the girl who was now staring at him with quiet fear. Her voice trembled. "They'll take me again, won't they?" He clenched his fists. "Not while I'm still breathing," he said. That night, as the colony lights dimmed under the shadow of approaching ships, Evan began to pack, grabbing tools, rations, and fuel cells. Lyra stood by the door, confused but trusting. "Are we running?" she asked. He nodded. "We're going somewhere safe." "Where?" He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Where no one will ever return you again." Outside, thunder rolled and the sound of engines filled the air. Inside, the mechanic and the alien child prepared to disappear into the stars. Two souls, both abandoned, both unwanted, now found something worth fighting for. Not a mission, not a dream, but each other. And as the rain fell harder against the metal roof, Lyra reached for his hand. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Thank you for staying." Evan didn't answer right away. He just squeezed her small hand gently and said, "Someone should have stayed a long time ago." The first smile, the storm had passed, but the colony still smelled of rain and metal. Evan's workshop was quiet again, though his heart was not. Every time he looked at Lyra, he felt a strange mix of peace and worry. Peace, because her presence made the lonely walls of his home feel alive. Worry, because he knew the world would not leave them alone for long. Days slipped into rhythm, slow and soft. Evan repaired ships and drones. Lyra watched and learned. Sometimes she spoke. Sometimes she only listened. When she worked beside him, she hummed softly, a sound that didn't seem human, but gentle, warm, and calm. It was the kind of sound that made broken machines hum back. One morning, Evan found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by spare parts. Tiny gears, screws, and copper wires floated slowly around her like a quiet storm. Her eyes glowed silver as her hands moved with perfect focus. When she noticed him watching, the parts fell back down with a clatter. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to break your things." Evan shook his head, smiling. "You didn't break them, kid. You just surprised me." He knelt beside her, watching the half-formed drone lying on the floor. It was smaller than his palm, but the design was perfect. Balanced, light, alive. "You built this?" he asked. She nodded shyly. It wanted to fly again. Evan picked up the drone and pressed the power switch. It blinked weakly, then buzzed into the air, spinning once before landing on her lap. Lyra looked up at him with a spark in her eyes. And that was when it happened. The first real smile. It wasn't big or loud, just small and trembling, but it reached her eyes. And for the first time since he met her, Evan felt his chest grow lighter. He laughed, a soft, unguarded sound that filled the workshop. "See that?" he said. "Even the drone likes you better than me." Lyra covered her mouth, giggling for the first time in her life. The sound was so pure, it made the old machines in the shop hum, as if sharing her joy. From that day, things began to change. Lyra stopped flinching at loud noises. She started talking more. She asked about stars, about engines, about why humans built things, only to throw them away. Evan tried to answer, though her questions were harder than any repair he'd ever done. One night she asked, "Why did you take me home?" He hesitated, then said, "Because everyone else left." She thought for a moment, then whispered, "Then I'll never leave you." Evan smiled faintly. But in his heart, he knew promises like that were fragile. Still, every day with her felt like sunlight sneaking through metal clouds. She would fix broken drones, as if she could hear their sadness when a machine refused to start. She didn't use tools. She used kindness. She would place her hand on its surface, close her eyes, and whisper softly. And somehow, the machine would breathe again. The locals began to notice. Some came with broken gadgets. Others came with curiosity. They said, "The alien girl can heal machines." At first it felt harmless, but whispers spread fast, and not all who listened came with good hearts. One afternoon, while Evan was out getting supplies, Lyra was alone in the shop. A group of men entered, their uniforms bearing the council's mark. They smiled too wide, spoke too softly. "Hello, little one said. "We heard you have a gift." Lyra froze, clutching her toy sphere. "Where is your guardian?" they asked. She didn't answer. The taller man crouched beside her. "You know, we could help you, make you better, teach you things." She shook her head, stepping back. "I don't want to go." Their smiles faded. Before they could move closer, a loud voice thundered from behind. "Step away from her," Evan said, standing in the doorway with an iron wrench in his hand. The men turned, their badges glinting under the light. "Citizen Cross," one said coldly. "You're harboring unauthorized biological property." Evan's jaw tightened. "She's not property. She's council creation," the man replied. "She belongs in containment." Lyra's hands trembled. The small drone she'd made floated nervously between them. "Touch her," Evan said quietly, "and I'll show you what happens when you break something I care about." The men exchanged looks. "Very well," the leader said, "but you can't hide her forever." They left, the door slamming behind them. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Evan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They'll come again," she whispered. "They always come again." Evan took a deep breath. "Then we'll be ready next time." She looked up at him. "Why are you not afraid?" He smiled faintly. "Because someone has to be brave for both of us." That night, Lyra fixed the drone again. Even though it wasn't broken, she said softly, "When I'm scared, I fix things. It makes me feel strong." Evan nodded. "Then keep fixing." The workshop lights glowed golden, the hum of machines blending with her gentle song. And for the first time in his life, Evan realized something powerful. He had given Lyra a home, but she had given him a reason to live. Outside, stars blinked in the dark sky like watchful eyes. Somewhere out there, the council was planning their next move. But for now, inside that small workshop, a broken man and a rejected alien girl found peace. And that peace was brighter than any star in the void. The hidden gift. The nights on Kayla 5 were long and cold. Evan's workshop sat under the twin moons, glowing faintly like a tiny ember in a sea of darkness. Inside, the hum of engines filled the air, a soft chorus of life and metal, and in the middle of it all sat Lyra. Her hands pressed gently against the heart of a broken machine. The drone before her flickered weakly, its circuits half dead, its memory cores fading. Most mechanics would have thrown it away, but not her. She whispered softly to it, words no human language could hold. And slowly, the drone began to breathe again, its light pulsing in rhythm with her own heartbeat. Evan watched from across the room, pretending to work on a different project. But his eyes kept drifting to her, to the calm focus in her face, to the strange glow that surrounded her fingertips. He had seen many kinds of genius in his years of work, but never this. Lyra didn't repair machines. She healed them. When the drone lifted into the air, spinning gracefully around her head, she smiled. Evan chuckled softly. "You know, if anyone saw this, they'd think you're a magician." She tilted her head. "Is that bad?" He shook his head. "It's amazing." She looked at her small hands, unsure whether to be proud or afraid. Later that night, As she sat by the window, she asked quietly, "Why do machines talk to me?" Evan set down his wrench and walked over. "Maybe because you listen." She frowned. "Humans don't." He smiled. "Not enough." The stars reflected in her silver eyes. "I can feel when they're sad," she whispered. "When they're tired. When they want to stop." Her voice trembled. "Sometimes they scream, and I don't know how to make them quiet." Evan knelt beside her. "That's not a curse, Lyra. That's a gift." "But gifts don't make people afraid," she said. He sighed. "Sometimes they do, until the right person shows them what it really means." The next morning, Evan woke early to find Lyra already awake, tinkering with the ship's old power core. He panicked for a second. That thing could explode if handled wrong, but she was calm, whispering to it like an old friend. A low hum filled the air, and for the first time in years, the power core stabilized, glowing a deep, steady blue. Evan stared in awe. You fixed it." Lyra smiled softly. It was lonely. Word began to spread through the colony. The mechanic's workshop was no longer just a place for repairs. It had become something more. Machines that others called hopeless came back to life there. People started saying, "The alien girl has the touch." And while some came to thank her, others came to record, to report, to whisper to those in power. One evening, a man in a dark uniform arrived. He claimed to be from the Galactic Engineering Bureau. He smiled politely, asked kind questions, but his eyes were cold, measuring. Evan didn't trust him. After he left, Lyra asked. "He looked at me like I was a tool." Evan answered quietly. "That's because to him, you are." Later that night, he went through old data archives, searching for answers. Who was she really? Why could she do what no human or alien could? When he found her name in a hidden file, his blood ran cold. Project Echo Children, created in human labs during the war. Hybrid beings designed to bond with machines, to feel their pain, to control them through empathy. When the war ended, the program was erased, the children destroyed or abandoned, but one survived. He turned toward Lyra, sleeping peacefully near the heater, her toy sphere glowing beside her. The file said her serial number was E17, but he knew better. She wasn't a number. She wasn't a weapon. She was just a child. The next day, he didn't tell her what he found. He didn't want her to carry that weight yet. Instead, he taught her how to hide, how to act normal. He made her promise to never show her power when strangers were near. Lyra didn't understand why, but she trusted him. Weeks passed, and peace returned for a while. They fixed ships, shared stories, and built things together. Lyra laughed more now, and Evan began to forget what silence felt like. But one night, everything changed. A loud knock shook the workshop door. Evan froze. The sound of engines roaring outside told him all he needed to know. He opened the small monitor feed. 3 Council patrol ships, landing near the hangar. Lyra's voice trembled. "They're here for me." Evan grabbed his tools, his data chips, and a small emergency bag. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "We have to go. Now." Lyra looked frightened. "But where will we go?" He smiled faintly. "Where machines still sing. And no one can take that away." She reached for his hand, her small fingers shaking. "I'll make the engines happy," she said softly. "They'll fly fast for us." He squeezed her hand. "Then let's give them a reason to." Outside, as the ships landed and floodlights lit the metal streets, the old cargo vessel that had been silent for years suddenly roared to life. Its engines glowed silver, brighter than the twin moons. Inside, Lyra stood at the controls, her eyes shining, her hands pressed against the console. She whispered, "Wake up," and the ship obeyed. Evan glanced at her, amazed. "How are you doing that?" She smiled. "I'm not making it fly. I'm asking it to." As they lifted into the dark sky, the colony shrank beneath them. Sirens echoed in the distance, but the stars opened wide above. and for the first time since she was born, Lyra wasn't being sent away. She was choosing to leave. The ship shuddered as it broke through Kalor 5's upper atmosphere. Evan gripped the control lever tightly, his knuckles white. The warning lights flashed red, alarms blared, and the entire cabin shook. Behind him, Lyra stood with her hands pressed against the engine core, her silver eyes glowing brighter than the stars outside. "Hold on!" Evan shouted. "I am," she whispered, her voice calm, even as metal screamed around them. The old cargo vessel had not flown in years, its systems worn and unstable, but with Lyra, it was different. The ship responded to her voice like a living thing, obeying her whispers, healing its own fractures, as if afraid to fail her. Outside, 3 Council patrol ships gave chase, their sleek silver bodies cutting through the black void like knives. "Unauthorized vessel, power down immediately," the comms repeated. "You are harboring illegal biotechnology." Evan shut the channel off, his jaw clenched. He looked back at Lyra. "Can we outrun them?" She nodded slowly. "If the engines trust me." He almost laughed. "Then tell them to hurry," the ship groaned, then surged forward, its thrusters glowing white hot. They darted between the asteroid fields, weaving through broken rock and space debris. Lyra's hands trembled, her mind stretching to touch the ship's systems, feeling each pulse, each spark, each cry of pain from the metal. She soothed it with her voice, whispering lullabies that no human could understand. And somehow, the ship began to move faster, smoother, alive. Evan glanced at her, amazed and terrified. He had seen skilled pilots, seen warships dance through battlefields. But this was something else entirely. It was as if the girl and the machine were one. A blast rocked the left hull, sending sparks across the cabin. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. "It's hurt." Evan pulled down a lever, sealing off the damaged section. "Focus on the engines. I'll handle the rest," he said. She nodded, tears in her eyes, whispering again to the machine, "Don't give up, please." And the ship answered, its lights flickering back to life like a heartbeat restarting. The chase cut through the asteroid field like lightning. The Council ships fired again, but Lyra was faster. She guided them through the debris, turning at impossible angles, the ship gliding where it should have shattered. Every move she made felt less like flying and more like dancing. Evan could only hold on, trusting her completely. Minutes felt like hours. When they finally broke free of the asteroid belt, open space stretched ahead, dark, endless, silent. Lyra exhaled, sweat glistening on her forehead, her hands still glowing faintly blue. Evan looked at the radar. No pursuit, no signals. They had lost them. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit. Only the soft hum of the ship's repaired heart remained. Evan leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. "You did it," he said quietly. Lyra looked up, unsure if she should smile. "We did it," she corrected. He laughed, a tired but genuine laugh. "Yeah, we did." Outside, stars drifted past like glowing dust. Evan checked the map. They were off course, far beyond any patrol routes. He turned to Lyra. "We'll need to find somewhere safe, somewhere they can't follow." She nodded, her voice small. "I know a place. I can feel it." He frowned. "You can feel it." She nodded again. The stars talked too, just quieter. They flew for hours in silence. Evan repaired minor damage, while Lyra sat beside the ship's console, her fingers tracing patterns on the metal. It was strange. Wherever she touched, the surface shimmered softly, like the ship recognized her. He finally asked, "When you talk to machines, what do they say?" She thought for a while, then answered, "They tell stories about who they served, about how they were treated, about how they want to be useful again." Evan looked at her with quiet awe. "And what do you tell them?" She smiled faintly. "That they're enough, even if they're broken, Something about those words hit him harder than he expected. He looked away, hiding the warmth that spread through his chest. Maybe, he thought, she wasn't just talking about machines. When night fell, or what passed for night in deep space, Lyra fell asleep by the console. Evan watched her for a moment, the faint glow of the ship's lights reflecting off her silver hair. He whispered softly, "You're not a mistake, kid. You're a miracle." Outside, the stars seemed to pulse in agreement, but peace never lasted long. In the distance, faint blips appeared on the radar again. The council had not given up. Evan adjusted the coordinates, pushing the ship toward a nearby nebula, a glowing storm of dust and light that could hide them. As the ship entered the golden mist, Lyra woke up, her eyes flickering open. "Where are we?" she asked. Evan smiled faintly. "Somewhere between danger and freedom." The nebula swallowed them whole, colors swirling outside like a dream. Lyra stared out the viewport, whispering, "It's beautiful." Evan nodded. "It is." Then she added softly, "But beauty doesn't mean safe." He looked at her and realized she was right. The nebula was alive, full of electric storms and magnetic traps. And somewhere beyond the glowing clouds, the council ships followed. But this time, Lyra didn't look afraid. She closed her eyes, reached out again, and said, "Let's show them what hope can do." And the ship answered, brighter and stronger than before. Because now it wasn't just a machine running from fear. It was a home fighting to stay free, the truth of her creation. The nebula surrounded them like a living dream. Golden clouds twisted around the ship, glowing softly, hiding them from the council's scanners. Inside, silence ruled, broken only by the low hum of the engines. Evan sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the starlit mist outside. He had flown through battlefields, pirate zones, and dying worlds. But nothing felt like this. It was calm, yet strange, as if the universe was holding its breath. Lyra sat across from him, quiet, her eyes half closed. The faint blue glow from her skin flickered with each heartbeat. She looked peaceful, but there was a shadow behind her, calm. She had been different since the chase. Distant, thoughtful, as if she was hearing something he couldn't. Finally, Evan broke the silence. "You said you could feel a place, a safe one. What did you mean?" Lyra opened her eyes slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The stars told me. They remember things." He frowned. "Stars don't talk. Lyra." She tilted her head. "Not in words. They sing in light, in silence. In memory." Evan rubbed his temples, smiling tiredly. "You really are something else." Lyra looked down, her tone soft. "I wasn't supposed to be anything." He turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then stood and walked toward the back of the cabin. "Follow me," she said. They entered the cargo hold, cold, dim, filled with crates and shadows. Lyra stopped near a broken metal container, one Evan hadn't noticed before. Symbols glowed faintly on its side. Old markings from the council labs. Evan's chest tightened. "Where did this come from?" Her voice trembled. "I woke up inside it." For a moment he couldn't speak. "You mean, that's your pod?" She nodded, her hands tracing the surface gently. It was not a home, it was a cage. Evan knelt beside her, examining the symbols. He recognized some of them. They were genetic codes, experiment tags, and data lines about Prototype 7, adaptive symbiont. Symbiont, he muttered. "That's not even a person. That's a tool," she finished, her voice breaking. "That's what they made me to be." Lyra sank to her knees, the blue light from her hands flickering weakly. They wanted something that could connect with machines, heal them, control them, make them obey. Evan stared at her, realization hitting hard. "You weren't just communicating with the ship. You were merging with it." She nodded, tears in her eyes. They called it a gift, but it hurts. Every time. It hurts so much. Evan clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. All this time, they weren't chasing you because you escaped. They were chasing you because you worked. She looked at him with sad eyes. Yes, and because I stopped obeying. Her words hit like thunder in the quiet hold. He sat beside her, the dim light reflecting off the cold metal floor. What made you stop? He asked. She thought for a long moment before answering. They asked me to fix something once, she said. A warship, broken after battle, full of pain and voices crying inside its metal. I touched it, and it showed me everything it had done, she whispered. All the worlds it burned, all the lives it ended, and it asked me why I was helping it. Her voice cracked. I didn't have an answer. Evan's breath caught. That was the moment she had become more than her creation, more than a weapon. It was the moment she had chosen to feel, to be something human. He reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong, Lyra. She shook her head. I broke their orders. I refused to help. So they tried to take me apart. Evan's jaw tightened. You survived. That's what matters. She looked up, meeting his gaze. No, Evan. I didn't just survive. I changed. Her eyes glowed brighter, the faint hum of the ship rising in response. The lights around them flickered. The floor vibrated softly. Evan stood quickly. Lyra, what's happening? She held her chest, breathing hard. It's reacting to me again. The ship's console screens came alive. Data streams flashing faster than human eyes could read. And then, a projection formed in the air. A flickering hologram, showing images of the council labs. Rows of pods like hers. Hundreds of them. Each one holding a child, sleeping, connected to wires and machines. Evan stared, horrified. There are more of you. Lyra's voice shook. No, there were. I feel only silence now. Evan's stomach turned. They ended the rest. She nodded weakly. They said I was the only one who worked. The only one who lived long enough to feel. He didn't know what to say. Rage burned inside him, mixed with sorrow, mixed with helplessness. He looked at her. This fragile, glowing being who only wanted peace, and swore silently he'd protect her. Lyra touched the pod again, whispering something in her alien tongue. The light on the container faded completely, like a soul being set free. Then she looked at him, calm but fierce. They think I'm their creation, she said, but they don't understand what I've become. Evan met her gaze. What's that? Her lips curved into a faint, almost defiant smile. Alive, she said. Outside, the nebula shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself had heard her declaration. For the first time since he met her, Evan didn't see a frightened experiment or a runaway. He saw a person, powerful and pure, standing against an empire that tried to erase her soul. He placed a hand on the console, looking at her. What do we do now? Lyra's expression hardened. We find where I was made, she said, and we make sure they never hurt anyone again. Evan nodded, a small, dangerous smile forming on his face. Then let's finish what they started. The engines roared to life again, the light of the nebula, reflecting off the ship's hull, and as they flew toward the unknown, the stars seemed to burn brighter, because somewhere, in the quiet dark of space, a creation had just become a cause, and a runaway girl had just become something far greater. A spark of hope. The final stand. The ship cut through the darkness of space. For hours, neither Evan nor Lyra spoke. They had a destination now. The Council's main laboratory world. The place where she was created, used and discarded. The coordinates had come from the pod itself, unlocked by Lyra's touch. A place marked only by one name in the Council's archives. Origin point. Evan's eyes stayed fixed on the navigation screen. His thoughts burned like fire. He wasn't just flying into danger. He was flying into the heart of the people who thought life could be owned. Beside him, Lyra sat silently, her hands folded, her glow dim, as if saving her strength for what was coming. Are you sure you want to go back? Evan asked quietly. She looked at him, calm and steady. "I don't want to go back," she said. "I want to end it." He nodded slowly. "Then we end it." As the ship neared the system, the stars faded into cold light. Metallic moons and broken stations floated around a dark planet below. The surface was covered in storm clouds, streaked with blue lightning. It looked like a world built for secrets. "Power signatures detected," the ship's AI announced. Dozens of signals lit up the radar. "Council warships." Waiting for them, Evan smirked grimly. "They knew we'd come." Lyra's voice was calm. "They've been waiting for me since the day I ran." Outside, the enemy ships began to move, surrounding them like wolves around a single spark. Evan tightened his grip on the controls. We can't fight them all." Lyra stood, her eyes glowing brighter now. "No, but we can show them what they created." Before he could answer, she walked to the center of the ship, placing her hands on the console. The lights dimmed, then flared white. The air vibrated as the ship's systems fused with her presence again. But this time, the connection felt different. Stronger, purer. It wasn't pain now, it was purpose. Evan watched as her silver hair lifted slightly in the static air. Her voice filled the cabin, calm yet powerful. "They wanted control, but they gave me something greater." The ship began to glow from within, threads of blue light spreading through every panel and wire. Evan's heartbeat raced. "Lyra, what are you doing?" She smiled faintly. "I'm giving them back their gift." Outside, the warships opened fire. Beams of light tore through the black void, slamming against Lyra's ship. But each time a blast struck, it dissolved into waves of light. The energy bent around them, forming a shimmering shield, alive and breathing. It wasn't just defense. It was transformation. Evan's eyes widened. "You're using their own energy." Lyra nodded, her voice echoing. "I'm returning what they took." Her glow brightened until the entire ship pulsed like a star reborn. Then she sent out a wave. Invisible, silent, but powerful. It spread through the fleet like a ripple through water. One by one, the enemy ships stopped firing. Inside their metal hulls, systems shut down, engines silenced, weapons locked. And then something extraordinary happened. The ships began to sing, not with sound, but with light. Every hull glowed softly, flickering with memory. The memory of what they'd done, what they'd destroyed, and what they could be instead. Evan stared, overwhelmed. "You're showing them everything," Lyra whispered. "I'm showing them truth." The entire battlefield became silent. No more lasers, no more screams. Only light, soft, steady, spreading outward. Evan stepped beside her, watching as the once dead warships turned into beacons across the sky. The nebula they had passed through earlier appeared on the horizon, glowing as if watching the final act unfold. On the main screen, a new transmission appeared. An old man in council uniform, his eyes cold but uncertain. "Prototype 7, he said. "Return yourself to containment, and we will not destroy the human." Evan laughed bitterly. "You still don't get it, do you?" But Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "You didn't make me," she said. "You only discovered what you could never control. Life." The man's face hardened. "You are not alive. You are data." Lyra raised her hand, and for a moment, every ship, every light, every machine in the system pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. "Then listen," she said. A pulse of energy spread outward. Every artificial system across the fleet, every AI, every drone, every reactor, lit up with the same glow as hers. They had connected, not as weapons, but as witnesses. And for the first time in history, the machines themselves refused the Council's commands. The transmission flickered and died. Silence returned, then slowly. The fleet drifted aside, opening a path. Lyra's light faded to a soft, peaceful glow. She turned to Evan, her voice trembling. "It's done," he smiled. "You just changed everything." She nodded. tears glimmering in her eyes. Maybe now. No one will ever be born in a cage again. The ship began to descend toward the planet, not for battle, but to free what was left. The laboratories below had gone dark, their control lost. Evan landed near the largest structure, stepping out beside her into the stormy air. For the first time, Lyra felt the rain. Cold, real, alive. She smiled softly. It doesn't hurt anymore. Evan looked at her, proud, amazed, and quiet. He had fought in wars, seen victory and loss, but never something like this. This wasn't conquest. It was freedom born from kindness. Humanity's greatest power, not in strength, but in heart, together. They walked toward the silent towers of the lab, Evan's coat flapping in the wind, Lyra's glow, lighting the dark, behind them. The stars still shone with her light, and across the galaxy, machines once bound to command began to dream of peace. She was no longer Prototype 7, no longer a runaway experiment. She was Lyra, alive, free, and finally home. And beside her walked the human who saw her, not as a weapon, but as a person. The one who gave her the forever home she had never dared to imagine.